we've been doing so far is vanilla JavaScript. It's been around forever. And we kind of talked about the fact that there is newer versions of JavaScript that are coming along the pipe, and they call it ES6. It's a term you'll hear more and more. And we talked about it some, and we talked about it that browsers are getting more and more compatible with the newer ES6 things, but a lot of the new frameworks count on ES6. And so there's some things that I need to make sure you're comfortable with the terms and how they mean. So as we progress from here on out, we can start using the newer, cooler stuff. So the first thing I want to bring to your attention is this word callback. And it's something that we've been playing with a little bit, but I'm not sure if we completely understand how it works. So I'm just going to do a little example of what the word callback means and what exactly is happening. And so I'm going to create a function called callback. I'm going to do a function called do first. And I think I'll just do a console.log. We'll do like 1 or something. And I'm going to do a function do second. That should be in a script tag, which I did not do. No Dr. Pepper infraction because you guys didn't catch it before I did. So no fouls there. Okay. And the second function will have it also log console.log the number 2, because these are super important functions, and they have, that's something you want to do often in all your programs is log 1 and 2. But anyway. All right. So if we call 1 and 2, it should do probably what you would expect. So I'm going to look at my inspect element, console, and I'm going to log 1 and 2, and it does it exactly the way we expect it. Nobody should have any problems with this. I'm sure this looks fairly comfortable, hopefully by now. If not, we're in some big trouble. All right, so here's where things start to get interesting. Let's say that we did in, okay, I'm going to comment out my console 1 in do first, and I'm going to do a set timeout. And you guys are probably comfortable with set timeouts because we've been using them in maybe your games or something, where we would send an anonymous function of what we want it to do. And so I'll do the console.log1 here. And then after that anonymous function runs, we need a second argument, which is how many seconds until that function runs. In other words, if you're not familiar with it, after 1,000 milliseconds or after 1 second has passed, then do whatever in this function. Okay? And so if we run this, first the 2 runs and then the 1 runs. And so what's happened is, even though we called do first, do second did not wait for do first to finish. That was hard to say. Okay? And so that is something we need to address. And we've been talking about this, synchronous versus asynchronous, or this is kind of a timing issue right now too. So I'm going to also, now that you question, nope, somebody just coming in. Okay. Feel free to interrupt me if I'm not making sense. I'm looking at chat, nobody's doing, okay, good. All right, so I am hearing doorbells. Okay, so I'm going to comment this out as a side note because I want to show you another way that this is written nowadays. That looks familiar to you, so this is another way to write the same thing. This is ES6 syntax, and what they'll do is we're going to get rid of the word function, so I'm writing this exact thing except in a different way. So what I'm going to do is do an open and close curly braces, which represent, not curly braces, parentheses, which represents this empty argument that I'm sending. And then I'm going to do what they call a fat arrow, which is an equal sign and then the greater than sign. And then the open and close curly braces. Oh, I have to spell timeout properly. Okay. And then console log. So this is another notation or another way that you'll see if you start watching videos and so forth of newer frameworks, you're going to see this sort of syntax. And you might even see it even more succinct in this case, since we only have one line of statements, you might see it look something like that. I'm going to leave a semicolon. So that's doing the same thing. Okay, so this notation is the same thing as a anonymous function that I'm not sending anything to in the argument. So it's just sort of a side note, but a syntax you should start to get comfortable with because it's in a lot of the more current documentation. Things should still be doing the same thing, and we're going to get back to this idea of callbacks. That was just sort of a side step. Everybody with me so far? Give me a thumbs up in your participant windows or in chat so I know I'm not talking to myself. Yay. Yay, thank you. Good. 3 people, 4 people are with me. 5, 6, 7. There we go. Yay. Okay, good. Stuart's in here twice. He's going to be super smart today. All right. So where was I going with this idea? All right. So I'm going to comment this out and start a different example to get a point across. I'm going to do a function, and it's going to call do homework. And I'm going to have a subject as a parameter, and I'm going to write the word callback. This word can be anything you want it to be, but because I'm expressing that we're doing callback, I'm calling it callback. And then let me just write out my thoughts here so then I'll explain it. In fact, I'm even going to cheat and just copy my notes. And then I'll give you a moment to enter that in yourself. Let's run it, make sure I did what I'm expecting it to do. Oh, I need to put this one back. Oops, spelled subject wrong. Yep. Okay, once I get rid of all my errors, and there we go. Okay. So let me explain what's happening here. We've kind of done this before. We've talked about the fact that you can send all kinds of things as a variable. We've sent objects as variables. In this case, we're actually sending a function as a variable. Meaning that let's figure out what's happening here. I'm calling this function, and I'm sending the string math to subject. I'm sending this variable, which happens to be the name of a function, so I'm actually sending a function to callback. So now if I want to run do first in this function, I will call it callback because I sent that function into this variable. So I've physically sent a function, which means that I have available as an argument in my function this do first function or method, because I'm tired of using the word function. So document write starting subject. Again, this backtick is ES6 syntax. It's allowing me to not have to concatenate. So the backtick and then the dollar string or the dollar sign, open and close curly brace, and the variable name. ES6 is trying to, well, interpolate is what it's called, what that value should be. And then the callback is running. And so by doing it this way, I don't get the cart before the horse, which is what happened here when we ran do first and do second. In other words, if you now watch what happens in your browser, document write, this will display, and then after that's finished, this function is going to be called. That function that we sent in was due first, which is going to time out, and then after whatever we set, oh, it's just going to, I didn't add the timeout, did I? No, that needs to be the second one. I didn't add the timeout. So let's do it as something greater. Okay. Save that. Sorry about that. Hope that wasn't confusing. So now what should happen is starting math works, second function got called, and after 2,000 milliseconds or 2 seconds, then the console log wrote. And so this is a way for us to control the timing of our events. In other words, callbacks give us the ability to do something first. When that action is finished, then do the next action, which happens to be a function, then run the second function. So that way we make sure that our timing is right. Okay, so let me get bold and try to take this one step further. All right, am I going to use, all right, I'm going to comment out all of this and start a new idea. Since I know this code is already working, I'm just going to copy in my notes. So you guys don't have to listen to my obnoxious keyboard and me typing in correctly. So let me give you an idea of what's happening. So let's just walk through the process. Message me is calling a function, and message me is sending an argument that is a string, and it's also sending a function called do third. Now notice I didn't, do third does require an argument. I understand that. But right now I'm not calling that function. I'm simply sending it to another function. I'm simply saying, function message me, you need all of this. And I'm going to send that to you now. So I'm not actually running it, so I don't need a value in here yet. There it is. All right. So function message me, please receive a string called a mess, and please receive all of this function in this variable. So now if I run, so let me just walk through this line then. So when I call message and I actually invoke that function, document write's going to write the message. Everybody's clear with that. This variable now refers to this function. Since I'm now invoking that function here, I will now send it what it wants, which is the time frame in which to run this timeout. So when this function's getting invoked, it's going to send 2500. This function runs, 2500 goes in here. After that time frame, a new line is written to the console.